everyone, and welcome back to Retro Game Hunting here on Player One Start. In the previous episode, I was going through a Goodwill and a retro game store, and I ended up finding a lot in this trip, so I wasn't able to feature everything in just one video. So in this video, I'm going to finish up and show you everything else I got in this trip, which included a couple of more stores. However, if you want to go back and watch the first half of the video, that link should be popping up in the corner, or it's also in the description below. Continuing on down the aisle from the PlayStation 1 titles, they have all of their PlayStation 2 and OG Xbox titles. And I didn't really take some time to go through these because I already had found a lot, and these aren't really a priority for me at the moment because I'm not really featuring them in a lot of videos. The same can be said for PlayStation 3 titles, however I do like collecting these now because they are at the point where they're starting to clearance out the games that aren't going to be very valuable or very popular within the next few years. However, moving past all of these titles down to the end of the aisle, they have their very limited selection of Nintendo Switch titles. I don't usually feature games that I find for modern consoles because that's not really what I do on this channel. But if I am going to buy a modern title, I usually try to go for used rather than new. One thing to look out for with these titles though is you want to make sure it doesn't have a mandatory download code that comes with the original title, otherwise the title is pretty much useless. Sonic Team Racing caught my eye, but I didn't really feel like this was a steep enough discount for me to get this game. It's a good thing too because I ended up getting it brand new for cheaper when I went out Black Friday shopping last year. But other than that, nothing really too much caught my eye here. Moving around to the next corner, we see all of their Nintendo Wii titles. Earlier last year, I had been on a collecting kick for the Nintendo Wii, as there were a lot of titles that were suddenly being clearanced out of places like GameStop and this store. I'm not quite sure how collectible the Wii will be because it was the most popular platform, and there are a ton of these games and systems floating around out there. And speaking of collectible, the Gamecube market took off a lot last year, with a lot of titles skyrocketing in value. And speaking of which, here's a game I don't currently have for the system, which is The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Unfortunately, it was missing the manual, and at this price, I would expect it to be complete, so I had to pass on it. I also didn't have Rayman 3 here, but I'm not a big fan of reproduced art that comes from the store because, it's just not done well. I could recreate the art for this, but I decided to wait until I can find this more complete than getting it here, because it's not going to be a title that I think is going to be more expensive as time goes on. Below that was the Wii U selection, and I've kind of been on a collecting binge for that as well. There's going to be a video coming out sometime later on this year about it. New Luigi Bros. U caught my eye here, but it was missing the insert on the inside, and the case wasn't necessarily in great shape, so I decided to pass on it as well. One thing I like about collecting for the Wii U is that a lot of the titles that have been eventually ported to the Switch are still available for this console, and they are much cheaper than collecting it for the Switch. Even up until Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is a launch title for the Switch, it's still available for the Wii U. Ah yes, the inevitable day is finally here for these figurines. I've always been intrigued by these Infinity, Skylanders, and I don't know what else figurines that, you have to buy the character to play it in-game, but price is something that always steered me away from actually starting to collect stuff for this. And now the stores are clearing things out, I have to ask, are they worth getting into? Should I start collecting these things? Seriously, let me know in the comments below what you guys think, and maybe I'll start collecting these more and I'll do a video on that later. If it's not worth my time, then I won't waste my money or the effort. On the other side of the clearance bin, there were some things that caught my eye in here, but I actually was intrigued by this classic controller. It looks to be like a Sega Genesis style controller. It says for PC and Mac. I like that it actually has all 6 buttons on there as well. I may grab this because I've never really had a good experience playing Sega Genesis games through emulation because I didn't have a controller that had the layout for these buttons. The worthless Mario Kart wheel here. I'm not quite sure who would be looking for an RF modulator for a Sega Genesis. Usually you would go for composite or something better than that. In the last video I forgot to feature the fact that this store had a Commodore VIC-20 complete in box. I already have one so I didn't get it, but thought I'd show it still. Oh yeah, and when I was checking out from this store, my word, look at the price on this Game Boy Color game. The value of this game is pretty up there, but last I looked this is still about $100 overpriced. Wish I had the money to spend on that. Also on the way out, this mobile video gaming solution caught my eye. Would have loved to have one of those as a kid as well. Alright, but we've finally gotten through everything of that store, and we're on to another Goodwill. Once again, I have to trek all the way to the back of the store so we can get to all the toys and video games. And I didn't really see much here that caught my eye at first. I always check out the board games area because sometimes they'll throw some computer and other video game relating stuff if it comes in a bigger box than a CD or DVD case. And the first thing that caught my eye was this Microsoft Barney Under the Sea children's learning software, but I didn't end up getting it because it's not really to my interest. Although I did notice on the back that it was made by this 7th Level development studio, and I recently did a little expose on them because they did one of the Lion King games that I featured in my Lion King games reviews. And for those that wonder why I don't usually feature trips from Goodwill, look at all the garbage here, including a Twinkie maker that is just kind of piled up, nothing really to my interest. And of course there's the standard offering of a whole bunch of printers that I'm not sure if they do work. I'm sure they must do some sort of testing with them, but these don't really have any value to me. At first I thought this Brother was just a printer, but it turns out it's actually a full-fledged typewriter. And actually, now that I look at it, it looks like a word processor because it's got a little screen on there. Also hidden in there was this horribly yellowed but still sealed skin for a Nintendo Wii. Here I found a Blu-ray player, which I don't see too often in Goodwill. If it was a 4K Blu-ray player, I probably would have been more interested. Oh look, a disco ball. Well, while I have no practical use for it, I still kinda wanted it, although the $20 price tag did drive me away from it. Alright, but back to hunting for retro games. I decided to head up to the book aisle where they usually keep their CDs, DVDs, and usually have video games scattered throughout there. And the first thing that I saw is it looked like a store had just donated a whole bunch of unsold mystery games. Not really a big fan of these, and I think this is an appropriate place for them. Below all of those, they had a selection of some video games here, such as this Happy Dog Nintendo DS game. Next to that was yet another sports game for the Xbox 360, along with some prenatal and fit and fab mommies DVDs. But what caught my attention here was Godzilla 3D on Blu-ray. So, little known secret about me is that I'm actually a huge fan of the old Godzilla movies that came out, and I actually like this version, although I know a lot of people were kind of divided on it, and there were some people that didn't like it. Sometimes the cheesiness, corniness, and just overall idiocy of the movie is what I find appealing, and overall I think this kind of encapsulated what I liked about the Godzilla movies, so I'm definitely going to get this one. Again, I always check the discs before purchasing because, you never know if you're going to get something that doesn't work, or if the discs aren't actually in there. Thankfully with Blu-ray discs though, they don't usually scratch as easily, so they're usually in much better shape. There were a few other movies in here, but what also caught my eye was they had some HD DVDs. What's interesting to me about these is that usually when I find them in a Goodwill, and it's kind of weird that I have found them a lot in these Goodwills around this area, that they also almost always seem to be still factory sealed. It's almost as if they bought them thinking they would work in their DVD player, and they didn't, because they needed an HD DVD player to be able to play them. Another tip I have is that I always look through every single one of these movies in case a video game got missorted, but in this store that didn't seem to be the case. Everything was kind of sorted out separately, with all the video games being towards the top. And there weren't very many titles I was interested in, but it was the $6 a piece price tag that made me not want to get any of these. On the way out, I noticed a lot of these leapfrog activity things. I run into these a lot at Goodwill. Not sure why, but they always seem to be thrown in with the video games. I always check the case too in case they have any consoles in, and, well, they have a Wii power adapter. Guess they don't want anyone taking that. Alright, and one more Goodwill on my way home. While this one is the most convenient for me to go to, it's actually the one I don't find stuff at too often, but when I do, it's usually a big score. For example, my Nintendo Wii that I got in my Retro Game Finds video was found at this Goodwill. But anyway, on my way back to the bookshelf to look for video games, I actually found a whole bunch of these Star Wars fiction books. Believe it or not, I think I've read almost all of these books. Can't wait till they start making these into a TV series. Looking through the toys section, I found one of these DVD games. This actually doesn't go to a game console, this actually just uses a DVD player. I almost got it just to see what it was like, but eventually I decided to pass on it because I am running out of space to store all this stuff. Back in the DVD section, we have another well-organized area where there weren't any video games spread throughout the movies. However, there are some Leapster titles in here again. I found this game Shrek's Carnival Craze Party Games to be kind of curious. Hadn't heard of it before, but I wonder what this game is actually like. I'm not a big fan of Just Dance games, but they are good at parties, so maybe I'll grab this one as well, as long as the game looks like it's in good shape. I did see this LEGO Harry Potter Years 1 through 4 collection, but I eventually passed on it because it doesn't have the original case. It is the original artwork though. And again, the rest seem to be throwaway sports titles. And before I left, I decided to head back to their little electronics area, and on the way I was kind of mystified by this salon chair. That's the thing about Goodwill, you will find almost literally anything here, as long as it's been thrown out. And speaking of which, it's been a while since I've seen a shake weight in one of these stores. But that said, that actually wraps up this trip on retro game hunting. Right after I made this trip, however, one of the stores that I'd visited in this video posted on Facebook that they had a rare and unique item that I have been looking for quite a while. So in the next video, I'm going to have to head back to that store and see if I can get that item. If you like this video and you'd like to help out with future projects on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Also, if you enjoy the content of this channel, please remember to click on this subscribe button. Again, I want to thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.